roof mount's a lot of fun. So much more variation in roof mount. And then you're looking at different types of systems, whether you're fixing or clamping or gluing or, there's all these different types of systems. Let's go back 7 years where we said to someone, hey, you need to put a third rail in because your panel's big. And they would say, you guys are crazy. I've never had to put the third rail in 20 years in engineering. You tell someone they need to put a third rail in now, they're like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. There's wind and whatever else.
Roof mount solar is far more complex than most people understand, especially from a structural engineering perspective. In this short video with Sanna from Gamcorp, we go through the nitty-gritty of what's required from a structural perspective. This is taken from a longer podcast in the green room. Now, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. And without further ado, let's get stuck into it. From a job satisfaction perspective, do you prefer looking at the roof mount solar stuff from a structural perspective, or the ground mount, or both?
Yeah, that's so different.
Because they are different, aren't they?
So different, yeah, absolutely. I would say definitely roof mount is my personal preference. I think the reason for it is that there's a lot of variation in roof mounts. There's all different types of buildings, skyscrapers, warehouses, resi, or whatever it is.
Yep.
And every project's got a unique challenge. Every project you're working on, someone's got a problem and you have to solve it. They don't know what the problem is. You have to figure out the solution, customize the array, change the way you use it.
And sometimes they don't even know that there's a problem.
Well, that's the worst part, right? We have to tell them there's a problem, right, before they even get onto it. So I think because of the flexibility, like the amount of different types of experiences you have with roof, I think roof by far. Ground, it's really, is the soil any good or not? Right? If the soil's bad, then it's gonna be.
Is that what you write on your report?
Honestly, mate. Honestly, no, it is. Title at the top. I'm sorry, shitty clay.
Shitty clay, reactive shitty clay.
That's it. So
wow.
Right. So there's not as much to it. But in saying that, it's a longer engineering process. So you're talking about a megawatt farm. There's a lot of different types of soils, a lot of different types of wind pressures. So it has its own level of complexity as well. So I'm not going to underwrite it, say it's boring. It's not boring, but there's just so much more variation in roof mount. And then you're looking at different types of systems, whether you're fixing or clamping or gluing or, there's all these different types of systems that just constantly the industry is getting more innovative and you're learning so much more. It's roof mount's a lot of fun.
We're going to get back to the nitty gritty of
Yeah.
both roof and ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're still at, you're at Gamcorp.
Yeah.
And you came in as a sales engineer, but a real engineer who's into sales.
Yeah.
What was the next step after that?
Yeah, it started.
Because you're not a sales engineer now. That's not your role.
No, not at all. No, it'll come a long way since. But I think at the start there was about 10 engineers or so. And now we've got, close to 25 support staff and engineers and whatever else. So initially the aim was to grow the business and to bring in a lot of work, then to grow the team. And then naturally that progressed to, wait a minute, we have so much work that we need someone fully dedicated just to run the flow of work, right? From an operations point of view. So I went from that sales kind of role to more of an operations role to not only bring in the work still, but also make sure that we have the right resources in place to execute the work at the time expectation of the client and whatever else. And then once you have, like we do up to about 100 jobs a month.
Wow.
So the natural progression of the amount of staff you have and who does what and whatever else. And you have principals that are involved and oversee every single project. They have to sign off the project. So making sure that everyone's time is in line so that you can execute that number of projects.
And this is Australia-wide, isn't it?
And New Zealand. And I would say New Zealand's probably about 30% of it now. So it's it's growing pretty rapidly there as well.
And it's all solar-based?
All solar-based. Now, we do about 20% of work that's linked to solar but isn't solar, like BESS systems.
Yep.
They need foundations and shelters and whatever else. That we have some long-standing clients that have monotone poles and whatever else. So there is other work that we do, but about 80% of our work is strictly solar installation. And then 20% is like other types of engineering that isn't building. We just don't do building engineering. Anything nuanced, that you want to attach something to a roof, you want to put up a pole, you want to submit these shelters that have equipment in it. We're the kind of guys that help you with all these nuance.
But not wind turbines?
Not yet, no.
Is that out of choice or?
No, look, wind turbines are an incredible thing.
Yes.
Right, and I have a lot of respect for it and a love for it. The truth of the matter with wind turbines, a lot of it is designed by the manufacturers of wind turbines. So we don't really get involved in that design process because they have to fabricate it and manufacture it.
Right.
The only thing you're doing really here is the foundation.
Right.
Sometimes that's done by the building contractors and the main head contractors, and they have an existing relationship with engineers, and it's a pretty simple engineering task. I shouldn't downplay it. It's quite a big engineering, but it's a pole. It needs a footing, right?
Yes,
like most people
absolutely.
can do that, right? The wind farm manufacturers provide the reactions of the lateral forces they have to account for,
right?
And you've got to design a footing, right? Which is a pretty, in the scheme of it, it's a pretty straightforward engineering task.
So the wind turbine manufacturers provide the complete package. They go, you need to do this, this, and this, and the people go, okay, we'll build that foundation, and that's what.
And someone signs it off, and they go ahead with it, right?
I didn't realise.
Whereas with solar, a lot more to it. We're the actual people that are certifying how these products come to Australia, and if they meet the Australian standards, as opposed to the other way around where they're doing their own designs. They come up with a product and say, this works overseas, doesn't work in Australia. And we check all these aluminium extrusions and all these very weird shaped rails to make sure that they comply with a certain spacing in different wind regions and different building heights and whatever else.
That's really interesting, and because and obviously from a personal perspective, because Greenwood are involved in ground mount and roof mount and a lot of BESS stuff as well.
Absolutely.
And there's more and more BESS coming. You just have to look at and see what's in, like on LinkedIn, projects coming, and
you're doing a crazy amount.
Yeah, there's some amazing companies out there doing some wonderful things. Yep. So let's start talking nitty gritty.
Yeah, I love it.
on the roof mount.
Yeah.
Because you came in a couple of weeks ago and talked to our engineers about what to look for when it comes to actually site inspections, and something that really stuck with me is that 99% of people out there doing site inspections aren't really doing them properly. They may be for the electrical side, but when it comes to reporting what is structurally going on with a building, they're nowhere near up to par.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a fault of our own, right? Gamcorp's own, because for a long period of time, there was a very kind of like, let's get this concept introduced of what's the importance of doing inspections and getting roof information. So we put a checklist out that had some information for people to gather, and they were quite used to that process. But then as these, and when you're doing a 50 kilowatt system on a 300 square meter roof, that could be fine. You just check the structure that's underneath that small part of the building, and you're good to go. You've got all the information you need as an engineer to complete that assessment. But what's happening now? Now they're putting a 400, 500 kilowatt system on a building that takes every square meter of that building, and they're expecting a very abbreviated inspection to kind of do the same as what was done before. And it's just not the case. We need a lot more detail now, and the people aren't providing that detail, and engineers are signing off on that lack of detail, and it's becoming a real sketchy kind of place now.
But when they sign off, that's a legally binding document, isn't it?
The irony of that, and you're right in the sense that they've got a document that says they've signed something off. But the truth of the matter is, if there's a 1 kilometer building and someone does one inspection point and an engineer says, according to the information provided, you can install solar, right? Okay. But then something happens on site, which has happened, many times in the last few years, where a panel flies off or there's a deflection of some sort, and the engineer will quite quickly say, yeah, but this happened at this point, and the structure's completely different. I wasn't provided this information. Right, so then the liability becomes blurred. And
get out of jail.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a swindle act for sure. Whereas there's
I shouldn't laugh. Sorry.
No, you're right. There's other engineers, and not just when I said this, not Gamcorp. There's great companies out there doing great things as well, but especially Gamcorp as well, where you're just not happy to take that as an abbreviated approach. We'll help you when we can do it for you properly and make sure that everyone, including the building owner, is taken care of, not to cheap the assessment for you to slap solar on a roof where it could lead to X, Y, and Z in the future.
So is part of what Gamcorp, part of what they do and what they should do is educating the public to show that you may think our assessment is super duper conservative, but the reality is we're doing it because of this, this, and this.
Absolutely.
And now you know.
Mate, there was a time period, Veli, when, let's go back 7 years, where we said to someone, hey, you need to put a third rail in because your panel's big.
I want to ask you about this.
And they would say, you guys are crazy. I've never had to put the third rail in 20 years in engineering. You tell someone they need to put a third rail in now, they're like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. There's wind and whatever else. But that comes from countless years of pushing the industry, not just us, but our array frame partners, telling people, hey, wait a minute, your rails can't span this length under this wind pressure. You need to give them an extra rail and whatever else. That kind of educated them to a point where certain things are accepted now, but there are a lot of things that are still like, oh, I can't believe 4 rails. No, I can't do that. Like, that's ridiculous. But that's a common occurrence in the corner of a widespread building when you're trying to account for the high wind loads.